Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 801, Richard and Gary are both here. We've got lots to talk about. We've got Apple news, we're talking a little bit about my vintage synth, which I repaired over there. We've got some EV news. We've got new builds of Windows 10, including great new features coming to Windows 10 for Linux users, news and interests, and lots more. So let's get straight to Richard and Gary.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Okay, very good. And you're in Vision tonight, which is even more splendid.
In Vision for a change, yes. Yeah, it's actually worked. Finally made my webcam work after all these years.
Yeah, and a nice collection of rockets behind you there.
Yeah, bonus points if you can spot each one.
People can write in.
More likely the payloads.
Send a postcard too.
Yeah, just saying 2 Saturn V's not going to cut it. It's like, what are the payloads?
Yeah, and behind me, I've got my Gen SX 1000 all cleaned
I'm
up.
hoping we're going to get a demonstration there, Ian.
Well, I could do. It's all patched in, so why not? I can do that and tastefully edit this in. I'll get Alexa, turn on desk. I'll turn on the amplifier.
Fantastic.
So I used the Surface Sol spray, which the volume control was particularly noisy. So as you were playing and you turned the volume, it was horrible. And the LFO, which the oscillator.
But he's what, 40 years old, 35 years old? So it's
yeah, 1978.
Wow.
So there you go, you can hear it.
Oh, a lovely squidgy noise. Oh, that's great, that is. Yeah. Oh, lovely.
So yeah, it's very good. You can make bass sounds, or you can have the Doctor Who sounds and everything. You know, you can do the whole.
It's like the BBC Radiophonic Workshop is in your room. It's fantastic.
Yeah, the whole. You can do the whole gamut, but the bass is very nice. But
it's a lovely sort of wet, squidgy bass there. Brilliant. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, so it's spotless. What I did, I used some cotton wool buds and some of those little the thingies for cleaning your ears with. I went round and cleaned all the keys and every little gap and everything. So on Sunday I spent ages going through that.
Oh, it sounds great.
Spotless now.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, it's all nicely restored now. So I actually posted a video of I captured some video while I was cleaning it. So I posted that and a little demo on the end of that as well. So that's a 1978 Gen SX 1000 from Italy.
Well, I'll look forward to a remix of the TDL tune with that.
Just that, yeah.
Yes.
There's no MIDI. There's no USB, no MIDI, no anything. So it's all audio, live audio, or nothing for that. So yeah, so it sounds good anyway. I also cleaned up my Korg MS2000 as well, which is a 2000 era one, but that was working okay. So the next restoration is my DX100, but that's actually working. It just needs cleaning, that one. So I've actually managed to get.
I can just see that faulty just behind there. It's just visible.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a spring missing from there, and I found a place in Italy that has the spring, because these were made in Italy in 1978, but they don't have the key. So there's a piece of plastic. The way it works is two little metal rods underneath each key, and the plastic pushes it down and makes the contact. And the plastic is missing off the key, so it needs a spring and a key. But the guy in Italy doesn't have the keys in stock at the moment. I've looked everywhere else and can't find anywhere else. So the alternative is I could get the spring and maybe try to kind of make a key, or I'll just hope that the keys come back in stock at some point. I don't know where he got them from, but there are, I suppose, the other opportunities to get a broken one and take the key off that one at some point. But I paid the exorbitant fee. I think it was £40 in 1988 off someone at college, because the funny thing is, it's hard to imagine now, but analog synthesizers in that late 80s were worthless, really. People were giving them away and skipping them before acid took off. You know, TB303 bass lines and Roland TR-808 and 909s were being junked. And then now, if you've got a working TB303, you're probably talking £2,000 or something like that. in '88 it would have been £100 or maybe gives a fiver for it or something like that. Anyway, I've seen the brand new, fully restored ones then, £1,400 on eBay. More realistic is about £400 because they're not
almost an entire iMac.
Yeah. But they're not worth that much, really. I think they're a bit overinflated, the prices on eBay, so it's probably worth a few £100 really. But maybe I could find a broken one. I could salvage the key from that or something like that. We'll have to wait and see. So that's my so actually no tech in that whatsoever. No MIDI, no anything. Although I think you can retrofit them, but it has been a bit of a journey to try and get everything patched in so that I can control it all from the sequencer at once, which I've just finished. Which is why there's cables everywhere. So now everything's MIDI together, and I ran out of audio ports, so I had to get a little new audio submixer. So that's my next video. I think I'll do the video on the submixer.
Well done on accomplishing stuff.
Yes, well, and what I have done is while I've been doing this, I have recorded a few new tracks. So I've got a early Pet Shop Boys track, Pet Shop Boys style track, and a 1986-87 Tangerine Dream track that I just finished, which has got about 30 individual tracks on it. So I've enjoyed doing that one. But so I don't know what I'm going to do with those yet, but maybe I'll put them all together and release them some collection or something at some point. But anyway, there is plenty of stuff we wanted to talk about today because we didn't kind of talk about everything last week because we had a great chat last week with Alan about the old computers, and I did dig out my QL and tried that QL with the HDMI adapter which I showed last week. It didn't work, so I do need to get one of those special boards that Alan has sent me the link of. Some soldering seems to be required to get that up and running, which is okay. I'm fine with that. So, but that's another project. I can't bring anything else into this room and do anything at the moment until I get it all tidied up.
Is there any way you can tell if your QL is working before you start soldering things into it?
Yes, well, only in fact about a year ago I fired it up with the TV, analog TV, and it worked.
Okay.
It fires up, but when you plug the cable in, it makes a funny noise. But the cable doesn't. I also got the Spectrum cable, and the Spectrum doesn't work with it either. So I suspect it's the HDMI, the VGA thing. Right. It's the SCART to HDMI adapter that's not working, because Alan said they won't work. So he was right, amazingly. He's got a massive collection. He knows what he's talking about. So I've got some work to do on that, but I've got to finish one project at a time. So yeah, but there was a lot of things we wanted to talk about from last week. I suppose we should say as well, we're lucky that we're actually managed to do this recording tonight, because if we tried to do it this morning, we might be in trouble.
Oh yes, poor old Teams fell over again today. Yeah, well, not for all users, but lots of users had lots of problems today with Microsoft Teams, which is a little bit embarrassing. Bearing in mind they have had about a year now to get it right since everyone began working from home. So yeah, it does. I have to say, it's, I mean, obviously with cloud things, we all run on-premises stuff. We know how flaky they can be as well, so we should cut them some slack. But really and truly, Teams does seem to be particularly susceptible to falling over, and it's now everyone depends on it so much you don't realise you depend on it until it's not there. And of course, you can't run it on-prem. You've got to be connected to the cloud. So it means it's not just ordinary users being hit; it's corporates, enterprises potentially, as well as education. I mean, I saw a good few PE people say, "I can't do class today. What's going on?" And not sounding perhaps as sad as they should be.
Yeah, I think Gary just managed to get on. Did you have the Teams issue?
Oh, we definitely had the Teams issue.
Yeah, somebody said to me today, well, I need it. I said, yeah, but I don't think there's much I can do with it.
Yeah, hasn't been a post-mortem yet, because the last I heard from Microsoft, they were looking at an infrastructure update that they've done and we're looking to roll back, but I'm not quite sure if that's what it actually was in the end. I don't know, Gary, if you've heard more.
I think that's the only thing I've actually heard is exactly the same, that phraseology.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, again, I'm not going to say anything mean about Microsoft and testing, but I'm going to say something mean about Microsoft and testing. It's like, oh, come on, guys, test this stuff out first, please.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't get into. I mean, I've got about 20 different tenants for my teams, and I couldn't get into a single one of them this evening. So I'm making really good use of technology at the moment. I'm Skyping into the team's dialing number.
Oh, well done. But it didn't affect email and exchange. So, because the last few really big bangs have been down to authentication. So it looks like it was just with Teams itself, from what I could tell, unless you guys saw more stuff going down.
I think it was one of those servers that handles redirection and things like that. So I was able to join Teams calls and everything else fine within the Teams app. But then if you copied the link and opened the link in the browser, it just came up, service unavailable, something like that. So I think it was one of those clever servers that does all that routing. Yeah,
because I saw some people who were using the mobile app but couldn't do anything at all on desktop or web. So I guess it's obviously somewhere there must be a single point of failure.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't think to try the mobile app. I should have tried that. That might have worked. Desktop app definitely wasn't working for me.
Yeah, and it just shows you how we've all got so used to just living through Teams and doing everything through Teams. And like I said, people they hate nice HR ladies say, but I need it. I know. I can understand your pain.
Yes.
Oh, actually, looks like it may have just come back up. Whoa. Let's see if I can join the call the other way. a bit of stereo echo for managing. It's all good stuff.
Well, so apart from Teams, there was quite a few bits of news, and we ran out of time to talk about the Apple announcements last week, Richard, and you were about to jump on your high horse. And
I was about to unleash, wasn't I? Yes.
Yeah.
And luckily
luckily Alan was there we stepped back. So a week later, how are you feeling about the Apple announcements last week?
Worse, probably, if anything. Well, it's because I had a chat to a very good friend who is very into Apple Enterprise and education and stuff, and we kind of had. I mean, there were lots of announcements. Some were good, some were just weird. But I think it was the iPad Pro and iMac that I found most confusing. But I'll just start with the simple things. The AirTag appeared, which is very similar to the Tile thing we've seen elsewhere. I think, Ian, you may even have got one for your Windows Phone still lurking around somewhere. The kind of find your device.
Oh, yeah, the Nokia ones.
Yeah.
Now, they are slightly different though, aren't they? Because they're ultra wideband, which is the one thing which, and obviously the Galaxy tags are also that as well, which you can use for smart things, which is
and also I have to say for Apple, I didn't think they were that expensive initially. It's like $29, I think, for a tag. So it's not that horrendous for Apple really. Until of course I saw they had to have the Hermes one there, which is like $349 for a tag or $449 for like a tag. But I thought actually that was pretty good, to be honest. Although I've seen a few people moaning that the etching rubs off quite easily. So I guess that's a worry for me. But then again, if you're going to bung this in on a keyring, it's going to get scratched surely. So I'm not quite sure if that's an issue. There was also the purple iPhone, wasn't there, which I found very odd because they launched that to the song of the Candyman from the Willy Wonka from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure the imagery of a scary, creepy man singing to children about candy is necessarily the imagery I want to have with an iPhone, if I'm honest.
No, I wasn't sure about that either. Hey, Teams is working all of a sudden.
Yep, it is, yeah.
Hey, brilliant. Well, hello again. I can see you. Hurrah.
Yeah. No, whether you want to or not, it's another matter.
So there was that. Other minor things, I think, was the update to the podcast app, because in my opinion, with every version of iOS, Apple has strove to make the podcast app just that little bit more crap. And so I'm looking forward to seeing just how crap they do this. And I think the main thing is kind of, as well as an overhaul, they're going to do is it in-app podcast subscription purchasing. So you can sort of choose to have a paid version of podcasts, which may not have the ads in, because obviously if you listen to many podcasts these days, they are festooned with adverts.
Which we don't do.
That's the thing coming there.
Yeah.
But yes, the big thing I think was the two major hardware launches. When I say major, I'm not including the Apple TV 4K thing, which seems to almost be a hobby there at Apple. But it's the iMac and iPad Pro, and they did this wonderful thing where they had a Mission Impossible spoof of someone breaking into Apple's super secret labs and managing to steal an M1 chip from a MacBook. And it's mission impossible, because let's face it, anyone who can get into a MacBook and prise out an M1 chip without using sort of heat guns and sucker pads and all kinds of things is a better man than me, I can tell you that. So we had this Tom Cruise character lifting the M1 chip out of a MacBook and then dropping down and popping it into an iPad Pro to illustrate the fact that iPad Pros now have the M1 chip in them. And hey, it's Tim Cook. Yeah, it's great, fantastic. But I found this really confusing, because they also launched the new iMac. I think you need to go on the screen there, all the colors. And I'm struggling to see now how the M1 iMac is much different to an M1 iPad Pro, apart from maybe being a bit more rubbish, because the iPad Pro has got, it will go to 2 terabytes of storage. I'm not sure the iMac does that yet. But I struggle to see why you wouldn't have the iMac just being a big iPad Pro on a stick, because that's what it is, sure, isn't it? Well, I've always understood what the M1 hardware does.
It's a little bit different, but I mean, they're still persevering with actually having two operating systems,
exactly.
Which I think is the problem. Actually, I think with the M1 chip, that why not just consolidate?
Yeah. And I think that was, if you want to, I was trying to say, there's Mac OS here, it's not iOS, is it? It's the iPad Pro version of iOS. It's not quite software on iOS anymore. And we struggled to say, well, the iMac is a desktop machine, and that's kind of almost like a machine that's from a different era. Education obviously love them. But the problem is, for education, you've got no Ethernet port on the iMac now. You put it in the power brick. So that's going to be an issue. And I just found it very odd. I think surely you should just either, of course, the other difference is you're not allowed to have touchscreen on an iMac, whereas of course the iPad Pro is touchscreen. So, which again doesn't make any sense. You think surely it's the same hardware now. So I found that quite confusing. I was pleased to see it. There's been some jokes made about the chin on the iMac, but to be honest, we grow up. It's just it's where the computer is. But I did think the lack of a touchscreen, I think, was unfortunate, and I just think that they could have done something with the OS to kind of merge the two together in some way. It just seemed to be a very odd thing to do. Although one thing I did notice, Gary, you may have thoughts on this, was they did publish memories for the iPad Pro at last. So I think if you go for the higher disk capacity iPad Pro, they said you get 16 gigabytes of RAM, whereas 8 gigabytes are for the lower disk capacities. I think that's the first time I've seen actual iPad memory be officially published, and that's pretty chunky. Again, that's the same class as the iMac. Yeah,
indeed it is, and you do wonder if I mean, they are different markets. I think that the people who buy an iPad are not going to buy an iMac. It's in most cases, and the people who buy an iMac are likely to buy an iPad, but
the question is, I mean, who outside of, I mean, we'll skip enterprises for now, but who outside of education would buy an iMac now?
I mean, there used to be the creatives, but whether creatives would actually still use that, I mean, some design studios and things like that, but they probably got something bigger and better.
Well, exactly, yes. You'd probably go for, say, a MacBook, and you'd go for those gorgeous, massive 5K screens.
Yeah, you would, something like that. So.
And say, well, can I touch it? Well, not allowed to, because.
Can't touch that. I'm surprised they didn't use that, actually.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. One day they'll use that. I mean, there was, speaking of touch, there was one thing I think was long overdue, was the Magic Keyboard for the iMac has now got Touch ID in it, which I think is that's long overdue and good to see. Although hopefully the keyboard will work. Without being mean about Apple's keyboards.
Yeah.
So those were the major Apple things, I think. And as I say, I came away. I mean, obviously it's Apple, so it's all ferociously expensive. Apart from that, I had the AirTag that I thought was relatively good value. But I came away confused as to the iMac and iPad Pro. Just felt like the lines had got to the point of they're near as damn it the same bit of hardware now, just again with slightly different screens and a very different operating system on board. I mean, I just wonder how much of the future Mac OS has got, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of people using Mac OS for a lot of stuff. So, especially in development communities, a lot of people use Mac OS as their favored operating system for development. So, I think it's out there. but those sort of people will use a MacBook. I mean, you're not going to use a desktop these days. I mean,
Exactly.
I don't know many developers who use desktops anymore. It used to be the thing you did, but you don't then do nowadays.
Yeah. A big tower was the old thing you would always have.
Yeah.
I do have a Mac Mini, so does that count?
Possibly.
Yeah, I think certainly they look nice devices, but as ever, you pay for the premium for the hardware, and then it's whether the operating system does what you need it to do.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly the issue with the iPad Pro. It seems to be a bit of a confused machine. The iPad's very clear what it does. The iMac's very clear what it does. The iPad Pro is perhaps a bit confused at the moment, and it is. I mean, it's ferociously expensive. It really is. It's so much money.
It's for people who like to buy ferociously expensive things.
I think you're probably right, Gary. I think you're probably right. Also, it does come with 5G as well. If you want even more ferociously expensive price tag, they will turn on the 5G chip.
Yeah, and pay your extra monthly subscription to your carrier as well to throw that away. Yeah.
But again, not to take away from the fact, it is a lovely device. The screen is, the screen. They've updated the screen on the 12.9 inch, I think, and that looks fantastic. I mean, it is a lovely looking device. It's just a bit confused, I think. So, yeah, that was Apple. So,
Apple, you are confused.
Exactly.
Now, over on the Windows side of things, we did get something, a couple of new things, and we'll probably start with something that I know, Richard, you'll be really excited about. No, not news and interest, but WSL GUI Linux apps on WSL is in the new build.
Oh, this is brilliant. Yes, this is a Dev Channel build 21364, which I think came out middle of last week. I think pretty much.
Yeah, it was Wednesday night. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually probably hand over to Gary to give the developer perspective, because it is a developer niche thing. But I think they've done a really good job. So they've taken the Windows subsystem for Linux 2, which was already very, full-featured Linux kernel running inside Windows in like a sort of very heavily optimized hypervisory kind of way. But it could run many more apps and things, because instead of having to go through the translation layer of WSL1, you actually had a proper kernel, so it was much more compatible. You were able to run graphical Linux apps, but you had to do all kinds of hokey things with Xserver and things. It was all a bit.
It was a bit
brains, a bit hacky. I enjoyed doing it because it was a challenge, but it was hacky. Yeah. And you did think to yourself, why am I bothering to do this? It's a waste of time because we run all these apps on Windows. But it's a challenge. But of course, they promised us. I think was it at Ignite? It was Ignite, I think, where they promised us that it was coming. They were going to enable Linux GUI mode directly inside Windows. And they showed us some things. It wasn't very quiet. There were some leaks that happened over the Christmas New Year period that were not very full featured, had a few bugs. So I decided to leave those alone. But now it's officially out in the Insider channel, and this basically allows you to run, in a nutshell, Linux graphical apps on the Windows desktop, and they appear in the Windows Start menu. And I've got nothing more to say than it works really well. Audio, video. I'm at loss for words. Gary, at this point, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it just works. I mean, that's the thing. You can run virtually anything you could run on a Linux system, which is great. I mean, if you got sort of, I was looking at things like Scratch, and that was a learning thing. You could just plug that on the desktop, and you've got the ability to put that. It's great. I mean, this is great for kids learning programming and the like, because a lot of the tools which are out there are very much Linux based these days. I mean, it's because it's the Pi, and the Pi's just taken over. So if you don't want to have a Pi at home, just run one WSL2 on your desktop, and you can get away with it. See, I'm trying to turn the developer down to the consumer side.
Well, yes, I mean, exactly. It's just all this. I guess the one in challenge, of course, you got to think, well, what Linux apps are there that I have to have that I can't really run natively on Windows? Would be the one challenge you've got there. Yeah. Although, I mean, I do know, if we go really niche, I know a few spacecraft engineers that are very excited about this. Very excited.
But there are, I mean, the other element of this is smart home. I mean, if you look at
smart home service.
A lot of smart home stuff runs on Linux. There's a lot of that starting to use GUI type stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's really good to see that coming in. I mean, the whole WSL thing has been a real boon to smart home people. I mean, I run quite a few bits and pieces on my network now, which are just sitting in the background, running on a Debian build on WSL. I mean, Ian, with that thing we were talking about a few weeks ago with the Lightwave RF, where I've got the Node.js server. The Node.js server runs in Debian. It's a lot easier to get it set up on Debian than it is to get it set up on Windows, and it works. And that's sitting there running back in the background. I mean, obviously that doesn't need a GUI, but if you, similar things to that would be really good. And it's just such a useful thing to have as a secondary. I think. I mean, I think you're right, Richard. There's very few things you can run on Linux which you couldn't run on Windows in some form, but there are definitely niche things out there which and this is great, and it works. It literally just works.
Yeah. That's very impressive. Although it's desktop only, isn't it? I don't think it's gone anywhere near the server yet. WSL2. I think that's still. I think server's still on WSL1, and that I think will be the real impressive thing if you start seeing this virtualization happening on the server as well. But I do know though that they do have some work to do before it can be deemed fit for that kind of environment. But
indeed.
I think I think for developers this is great. I mean, Microsoft are clearly very keen to get the buy-in of developers. You know, they're doing this, they're doing 64-bit Visual Studio, they're kind of answering all the long-standing questions, which I think is good to see. And I have to give the WSL team proper credit for this because it really works very, very well.
Yeah. I had a quick play around with it. I need to rebuild my machine, but yeah, it's working. It's really nice. A nice feature.
Now, I'm not sure.
I had a nice thing to say about something there.
I'm not really sure what it says about Microsoft at the moment, that they can produce a Linux-based subsystem which works first time every time and is properly tested, and other things may not work so well.
but don't try and print from TKC with a printer.
I'm just going to say we're looking at the new Microsoft and the old Microsoft.
Yeah,
I like the new one.
Yeah.
Also in this build, there was a couple of bits and pieces that were quite interesting. The task manager now shows you what the each individual thread of Edge is doing. In fact, it should do, except once again, A/B testing. My machine didn't pick up the change, so so I couldn't see that in action. But they're rolling that out, so I think I'm gonna my Surface Go is running really slow now, so I'm gonna I think I'll get the build this week installed, and then I'll do a refresh and get it clean and shiny again, and then start from scratch with that.
I mean, I was vaguely surprised here when they said the phrase, "We partnered with the Microsoft Edge team to support process classification." Look, you partnered with the Microsoft Edge? Are you not all Microsoft? What do you normally do with them? Do you ignore them? Do you...
That's the old days. Yeah, and also you've also got that thing now in there where you can it's not put to sleep, but you can get it to like an eco mode on a thread, can't you? So I've had this in the past. It's mainly on server type things where a service is just hammering away and you're trying to resolve it and get it fixed, and get the control back of the server so you can find out what's going on. But you can right click in Task Manager and put it into this eco mode, which reduces the amount of CPU it can have. I think you used to be able to have it in XP days. Was it XP or earlier where you could set it high, medium, and low?
Yeah.
I must be. When I saw this, and I was surprised. I mean, I thought it was already there, and it's not. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I hope from old days maybe if you ever change the process property. Yeah,
because I remember doing that when you had a service or something was not running right. Stick it on low, find out what's going on. But yeah, so that's in there now. So I don't know. Under what circumstances you were supposed to use it, unless there is something that's causing you an issue, and you can right click and put it into that mode. But I'm not sure average users use Task Manager, but I Task Manager is one of those things that I have running on every machine all the time, and it's an essential tool to see what's going on in Windows most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly recommend anyone who's interested in Task Manager to check out. I think it's Dave Plummer and the Dave Shop channel on YouTube, where he was the author of the original Task Manager, I believe, and very interesting to hear his insights on how it worked back in the day.
Yeah. And I think that he's got. I think I've seen that because he's got all sorts of some of the key combinations that you can use, and some of some of the ways that it has priority over certain things and everything. It's actually quite interesting. I remember reading that one.
Yeah, it's worthwhile looking at that, definitely.
Yeah. The build was other than that, there was a huge amount of changes in there.
No, not at all. I mean, some people have, I think, mentioned that they found traces of what may be coming in the summer lurking around in it, but again, you've got to go digging quite deeply to find them. So I think it's unfair to talk too much about that because it's it could change massively. But yeah, otherwise, the big thing is the WSL GUI, which is great. But if you want to hear some grumpiness about Microsoft, let's talk about the beta and the preview build, shall we? So yeah, so these builds came out as well on the beta release preview channels. I think it's going to be in older versions too. News and interests is coming. Yay! With ongoing improvements based on insider feedback. Obviously, they missed out the whole don't do this. What's the point? I mean, I think as Gary said a while ago, I have problems understanding what this is for, apart from maybe to get some adverts and subscriptions and some paid content from other providers in the system. Because it's just like nobody wants this. No one's asked for it. It's very strange that it's there, and yet it's gonna come to beta and release preview. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to hit some existing versions too at some point, which is great because I'm sure people are really pleased to see that arriving.
Yeah, I think I said a few weeks ago that within Microsoft they love this feature, and I thought they might hold it back for 21H1 or maybe even later in the year and hold it back to the release that comes in September and leave it with insiders until then. But yeah, they love it so much they've pushed it forward. I'm on this is my Surface laptop that's running on release preview, and here you can see I've got news and interests up and running there. It just popped up after an update last week, so it's now on all my devices apart from the one I'm running on beta channel, which you think would get it, but it hasn't yet.
So does it come up by default, or do you have to enable it?
No, it just appears. The way you can tell, you can see I'm sharing the screen now, but the little cloud is down there showing the weather. That just appeared on this machine. Obviously, I'd seen it, so I knew what it was. But yeah, if you didn't know what it was, you'd just see the little weather indicator. And then, of course, when you hover over it, you get the news and interests. So yeah, I think people are going to start to see that fairly soon now. Who knows? I don't think it'd be that long. They said over the coming weeks, I think was the phrase. So
yeah,
I don't think it'd be that long. But I didn't have to enable it. It was after one of the cumulative updates. It just appeared on a reboot.
I must admit, it's just seems an odd thing to be showing onto Windows when there's more than enough other things which they could be fixing in these old versions and creating something new. So yeah, odd. As you know, I am not a fan of news and interests.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that they've got a new feature in Windows, which is okay, good to see. So then you make it a reason to update. Say, look, Windows version 21H1. It's a minor update, but we have got some new features in there. But instead, just releasing it for everyone, it just seems like it makes 21H1 slightly less of an impact. And I guess
it does smack a bit of when they tinkered with the search stuff as well. In that you realise how much of your desktop you don't really own because Microsoft can change that at any time. And I think that happened with the search to start menu, things began to change and appear in there because they were making server-side changes. So this feels like, again, they've got the plumbing in now to do the server-side change and say, well, what the hey, let's do it.
Yeah. It's an interesting feature. Like I said, I think Microsoft love it for some reason. Maybe because it, I did see some snarky saying, this is a feature for the 24H1 release. It removes news and interest.
That wasn't me, but I wish I'd said that.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I think I thought it might be something you would have said.
You see, I'd say that long, really? They kill things off.
Yeah, but I like seeing new features, but I'm surprised that they've just released it like this. And like you said, it shows you how much of Windows is actually now serviceable through the back end. We've come a long way from Vista.
Yeah.
Where everything was on the machine. So yeah, it's not not bad. So that was the new builds, the news interest going for everyone, which is good to see. I also got an update for the Duo this week.
Woohoo!
That last week, end of last week. That was the April update. Contains all the Android security updates for April, which Microsoft in release notes put April 2020. So I think they missed a digit there, unless they're applying 12-month-old security updates. But no major functions. A few UI type, usual things, bugs fixes, performance improvements, and there is a couple of bugs around the single screen mode, which they do seem to have got rid of, but no major features or anything like that. But I wonder, I think now we've got to be getting close to talking about what Android 11, because quite a few of the devices have got Android 11 running now, and I think this is they must be looking at that, or it maybe doesn't get Android 11 and the new one version 2 gets Android 11, but they're committed to, was it 4 years of security updates for the Surface? So they've got, I don't know how long Android 10 will continue getting upgrades for, but I would surely they need to push it on to 11 at some point. But yeah, we'll see. But anyway, Surface Duo is still running nicely for me, but nothing too exciting with those updates. But it's good that you get the monthly updates, I suppose. There was a time when people like Samsung, you wouldn't see an Android update at all in the lifetime of your phone, and now you get them every month. Same with the Galaxy Note, gets them every month now. So yeah, things are a lot better with updates now. Now, Gary, you had a story you wanted to mention tonight about Chromebooks.
Yeah, so Parallels is now available for Chrome desktop, Chrome OS. So this means you can run full-fat Windows apps on Chromebooks of certain types, because it has to be Intel or at least 86 base chips. They can't do it on the ARM based ones, and they have to have a bit of grunt to them as well, sort of i5 and above, to be able to do it. But when it does work, when you have got that, it works really well. And the price seems reasonable. It's about the £60 mark for this technology, which allows you to run Windows. Obviously, you need a Windows license on top of that, but this would allow educational establishments to run Windows apps on their Chromebooks, which and with all the printers that Google seems to have removed from Chromebooks of late, which are causing a lot of consternation, I know, you could actually run Windows and print to your printer, which you still got, if your printer worked. I
think you've got the wrong update.
But it does. I mean, this seems really, really well done. You can cut and paste between the Chrome desktop and Windows. You can run all the Windows 10 apps, and obviously the key thing here is you can run them offline, which is a big thing for Chrome. So yeah, I thought it was good to see it's actually been released. I saw this some time ago and it was working pretty well. So they've obviously taken their time to polish it a bit. But yeah, pleased to see that.
How much local storage do you need in a Chromebook to make this work properly?
We certainly need a beefy Chromebook, because they're talking about current generation ones. I didn't actually see a spec for how much space storage it needs, but it certainly was only the list was quite small on the ones it actually supported from each of the latest. I mean, it's basically the higher end Chromebooks, the sort of £500 plus ones are all supported by it. But yeah, it's. I will try and get the list and pass it on to Ian so he can put it in the show notes for what is actually supported. But yeah, it's definitely a restricted list of devices, but still good. And I did see that one of the Acer devices, which we reviewed on Fascinating Tech about a year ago, was on the list. And that had I can't remember what stories it had, but it wasn't a huge amount compared to some of the others. So it still works on some of the lower end ones. But yes, it's good to see though. I mean, it's certainly a very useful thing.
Oh, Parallels is great. I mean, having Parallels, there's a version of their virtual desktop for the M1 Mac too, isn't there, which will run Windows ARM.
Yes, indeed, it will. Yeah, so very impressive. They seem to pull lots of things out of their hats.
They do indeed. Yeah, it's very impressive stuff, definitely.
Yeah.
As are their little toolbox of sort of handy utilities as well.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I always liked when I had the MacBook. I always liked the fact that you could boot into Windows or you could boot into Mac and then run the Windows as well. That was a nice feature. That I can't on Chromebooks. I guess I can't really see apart from maybe education, like you mentioned. There's less use case, I suppose, for a Chromebook, because why would you buy a Chromebook if you intend to run Windows on it? Whereas Mac, I can see why you would do both.
I mean, I'd say definitely enterprise, because there's always that one weird app that you need to have Windows for. That I think would probably be the use case. And enterprise is more ironic, because Chromebooks are, they're pretty handy things to roll out, because they're easily, they can be good controlled and locked down. So I can certainly see parallels, using parallels, because again, Gary, I presume parallels on Chromebooks does I think it does on Mac, where you effectively have you end up with an icon on the desktop, and that fires up the Windows app, and you can see the Windows shell.
Yeah, that's right. So you can do the coherence mode they have on the Mac is very similar to the way they've implemented it for the Chromebook. So yeah, and you're right. Enterprise is the main target. I mean, it's described as parallels for Chromebook Enterprise on Chrome OS Enterprise. So I think that's definitely where they are. But they do mention education in their press release as well. So
yeah, well, exactly. I mean, if you got a powerful Chromebook, then it seems to almost be a no-brainer, because all these institutions and companies will have the Windows licenses that you need. Obviously, an end user may bulk up spending how much Windows 10 license costs these days.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah, I've not played with Chrome OS now for it must be a couple of years since the last used one, and I got one of the consumer type laptops to test, and yeah, it was okay, but it doesn't, for what I would use, it doesn't do the job that I would need. But I can see why some people have them.
Yeah.
Okay, what else did we have?
Well, I need to make a confession to Gary at this point. Gary.
Yeah. I
confess I bought a petrol car again.
Oh dear.
I tried so hard. I test drove the ID4, which I think it's only just available, and I would have bought one. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But I couldn't make the figures stack up over 3 years. I'd have to have done a lot more miles than I'm planning to do.
Yeah, I think mileage is the key thing, isn't it? Although, obviously, I mean, that's the ID4 is an expensive vehicle. I told you should go for the Skoda version. It's going to be exactly the same car.
And we've discussed issues with brand already.
but yeah, I mean, as I said to you on the emails, the thing always is with petrol cars is obviously there's a lot of other expenses to add, but on a new petrol car, I guess that's perhaps less of an issue, that you're not going to get into the service costs and things like that. I mean, I've had my 2-year service not so long ago, and it's covered by my lease anyway, so I wouldn't really know how much it would cost, but I was told it's only a couple of £100, and they changed nothing on it other than the washer fluid. I'd not used any tyres, I'd not used any brakes. They were still absolutely perfect, and that's one of the things I think with regen and the like on EVs. That's the other saving you get, which you don't necessarily tick over on, and then obviously the electric savings as well. But it's a shame. I think the ID4 was the perfect car for you. But
I have to say, I mean, I came so close to something on the line, because it is. I mean, it's a brilliant vehicle. I was so impressed with it, because it was obviously you've got the whole electric vehicle instant responsiveness and throttle, which is great, in a thing that was the size of an SUV, and it was just utterly brilliant.
I mean, as I've said to a lot of people, all EVs are sports cars. I mean, if you compare an EV, even the bottom end EV to maybe a sports car 5 years ago, they run away with them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a definite whiplash if you stamp down too hard on the gas pedal. Yeah. I mean, let's say I'd recommend anyone who's looking at these things to look at it and consider it, because it is they're no longer the funny little sort of electric vehicles or the massively expensive prestige cars. You're now seeing them at all ranges, and they're really impressive. I'm just. Oh, next time.
Yeah, that's kind of where I get this feeling. Maybe next time the balance will have shifted enough to.
I think the interesting thing is we're starting to see a lot of short-term leases and contract hire type roles. I mean, a lot of the motor manufacturers are moving away from trying to sell you a car. They want to rent you a car now.
Yes.
And that's I think where they can do it with something like an EV, because they'll retain their value. I mean, that's the thing. They just don't wear out unless they go. If they're going to go wrong, they go wrong in the first year. I mean, but that's what most people say. They have problems with 12-volt batteries or things like that. I mean, I know quite a few iPaces which have failed in the first year, but once they're repaired, they'll just go on forever. I mean, I now know someone who's got a Tesla Model S, one of the earliest ones. He's now on his 750,000th mile in his car. I mean, he does a lot of driving in America, obviously, with big spaces, but that's a lot of mileage for a car, isn't it? And it's not wearing out at all. The battery still is at about 82%, he said, of what he originally had on it. So it's impressive that life, and I think that's actually why manufacturers are looking to this rental process, because if they actually sold these things, then where's the built-in obsolescence on that? Where do they make the return eventually? Because these things will just last forever.
Yeah, I guess there is. It's a bit like with the computer model, isn't it? Now they're getting more and more reliable, and people hanging on for longer and longer. They've got to find a way to sell you a new one.
Yeah.
With pretty colours and thin bezels and things like
that.
that.
Or you take the Tesla approach, where you say, okay, we're not going to sell you a new one, but we'll sell you lots of little upgrades you can buy to your car as you go along, and make it a new car. So it's full size self-driving, or whatever the latest thing is.
Yeah, I think that's not a way to go yet.
Yeah. Well, maybe Rich, about the we'll have this conversation again in a few years' time, when we'll both have changed over. I must admit, I do like my car.
I mean, I would be very surprised if in 3 years' time, when I look again, I don't go electric. Very surprised. Something would have had to have gone badly wrong somewhere, because I mean, it was such a good car, I was so close to signing dotted line for that one. It was it just in the end, I had to do my spreadsheet to work out consumables, how many miles. I just wasn't going to do enough miles, unfortunately. But I think
that is the thing with electric, because if you do enough miles, the saving on electric over petrol just adds up. It's just.
I mean, it was hundreds of month, just astonishing amount. You can say, as long as you say, Gary, if you plan your journeys. But of course, the joy is you never have to use a filling station. I mean, I was discussing it with my wife as we come back from our second test drive, and saying, well, you drive past little petrol stations, so we'd never use those again. You'd never go to them. So but how would I charge it? I mean, you wouldn't, because you'd charge it at home. Every morning it would be like having a brand new full tank a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd never need to go to a filling station.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you did have to go to a new charger, you might find there's a few more of them at service stations soon, because it's a nice, lovely segue for a story. Because Ecotricity, which have been a little bit of a naughty word in the EV world, but since their partnership with GridServe, they seem to go leaps and bounds, and things are happening. Now this actually predates their partnership with GridServe, but they are about to open their Rugby service centre, service station, which is the new services on the M6, I believe, at Junction 1, which are, I think it's a moto services, and this is going to have a load of new lovely chargers at it. And I saw pictures of it yesterday, and it looks great. I mean, no need to wait for charging. You're going to have plenty of chargers there, and they're going to be reasonably easy to use, and contactless payment. So that's hopefully the sign of the new things to come on the motorway services. So that has been the one big negative point up to now. That, it's easy enough to charge as long as you're prepared to go off the road a little bit. But if you are doing that super long journey, and it has to be a super long journey now, because if you look at the ID4, for example, you can go a very long way in the UK on one of those in one charge.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
But if you're doing a super long journey and you need to charge, then the services weren't the best place to go to charge. And going forward, they may well be. But it's really interesting what's going on that whole charger infrastructure, and what the government's doing on it as well. They're certainly pushing some changes through. So watch this space on that. I'm going to keep up to date on the news.
We'll we'll be able to have a meet up and look at the cars in the summer when we eventually get to another computer museum.
We won't do a drag race because I can't be bothered to wait for you guys to catch up.
Fair dues.
Yeah. Especially now I've had my my injection as well, so I've had my brilliantly organised. I went to have mine at Boltmunder's football ground, which is not that far from me, and superbly organised. Brilliant.
Yeah.
You couldn't get more efficient way of getting people through
mine
there.
was really efficient as well. It was really, really good. So,
and at the risk of sounding very tedious, so was mine. It was just texted, came through, booked it in, jab, done. Took about 10 minutes all told. In 20 was brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a really. I mean, again, top. Have to say the whole vaccination program from the development of the medication through to the deployment in the UK at least has been very impressive.
Yeah, it has indeed.
It's been superb, yeah. So it makes me feel like that our meetup is achievable at some point this summer.
It's going to happen. Definitely going to happen. We're going to do it. In fact, you know what? We should start thinking about where we're going to go and in what order, because I think in the UK, certainly, hotels and things are going to be booked up pretty soon.
They are. I mean, I've got a break coming up, which I booked immediately. I heard about the things starting to improve with the vaccine, and if I was booking it now, it would cost me 3 times as much as I actually paid for it. Well, so yeah, we need to plan. Yeah. We need to plan.
Yeah, we think about
okay.
that.
Well, after this, let's pick a date and
we'll get that sorted. So, Gary, so where can we find you and your info on electric vehicles and all your other stuff?
Well, you can find me. Most of my electric vehicle stuff is on YouTube on the iPace Owner channel, which is going strength to strength. But also you can find me on Twitter at Gary2Rs WMA.
And Richard, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Richard_Speed.
And we can lovely to see you as well.
Yes.
In full colour.
And the Lego. There we go.
Yeah, and the Lego behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very nice. And we want people to send in your what those items are over to you.
Yeah, I think if you can guess what the 2 Saturn Vs are carrying, and also if you can identify what is on the top of the beneath the space station on the bookcase, that's a challenge.
Yeah, and they might need to go right back to the beginning of the show because I think we've got multi cameras on now, it squish your screen, so you need to rewind back to the beginning to see what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I should play out this week with a song from the Genesis one, a live song. But I think I'll give that a miss for tonight. But well, I'm at iSticks on Twitter. We should be back same time, same place next week, and we'll see you then.
Cheerio.